Hello and welcome to the Mental Wellness Ministry podcast brought to you by Adam Road Presbyterian Church. This is a podcast that helps you safeguard your emotional, mental, and spiritual well-being, especially during this time of COVID-19. My name is Joanne, and today is the first part series on depression. Depression is an incredibly common and isolating mental condition experienced by many, and yet there is still a stigma attached to it in society and many Christian circles. I'm glad we can talk about this mental illness openly today with Dr. Nyo Li Fang, a clinical psychologist, and Senior Pastor Christopher Chia. Hello to you both.
Hello.
Hello, Joanne. So good to see you. So good to hear you.
Yes, hello to you both. Well, let's start the ball rolling with a question from a listener who is 18 years old. He or she says, I know that God will always be there for me constantly, and that He has blessed me with so many things and people in life. However, I still get occasional depressed moments in life. I feel empty and lonely, and I cannot do anything at all. How do I get past this? Li Fang, can I just ask, are these feelings expressed by our listener normal and common to many of us?
These feelings that has been expressed are very, very real, and this experience are most common amongst all of us. So in our usual day-to-day, there will be moments where we'll feel a bit low, a bit unhappy, a bit unsatisfied. And there'll be moments where you might also pause and ask yourself, hey, what's going on? So especially as I hear this listener is actually 18 years old. So at this age group, as youngsters and teenagers, there are so many things that are important to them and are also demanding of their attention. It can be studies, can be relationship with people in school, with friends, with family, and also what's going on, the latest trends and social media. So if you think about it, there might be a lot of things that is bothering them, and it can be a confusing and difficult time. So even as teenagers, it's also a period where they start thinking more about who they are, who they want to be, and thinking about what they want to do in their life and what holds for them in the future. So it's actually quite common for them to feel a bit lost and maybe wondering are they happy with currently what is going on. It's actually they're currently at a stage where they are exploring and learning at the same time. Also, having said that, given the age group, it's also important to acknowledge that actually their body is still developing and experiencing changes. So sometimes the mood fluctuations do come as part of due to the hormonal changes, etc. So, and like the human brain is actually capable of developing all the way until we are 25 years old. So if you think about it, it is actually very common to have moments where you feel a bit low and feel a bit down. And that's something that's experienced by all of us.
Thank you, Li Fang. Thank you. And Pastor Chris, I'd like to ask if, depressed moments or depression, they're acknowledged as a common issue in society, but sometimes there seems to be a silence and a stigma surrounding this issue in Christian circles. So for anyone out there who is wondering, is experiencing depression part of a normal Christian experience when you're a teenager or when you're an adult? Could you share some of your perspective with us?
Firstly, thank you so much, Joanne. And thank you so much, Li Fang, for those very helpful insights and practical tips. And thank you to the inquirer who sent in this 18-year-old. I want to say as starters, please be patient with yourself. I just realized in listening to the question being articulated again, that I probably never overcame my teenage years because I'm still moody. Oh, no, I'm just kidding. More seriously, by way of biblical reflections and pastoral reflections, I think the first thing is to be able to distinguish between sadness and depression. Sadness is perhaps something passing in a day, in a season, very much dependent on our circumstances. It can be triggered. Whereas depression, as we now understand it in medical circles, is actually a sickness needing, I think, medical attention, needing diagnosis, and needing holistic treatment and long-term recovery. So that's the first distinction I think we want to make. In the Bible, there is no doubt it does speak of sadness. And the sadness comes from Genesis 3 onwards, because once we live outside God's presence and outside His purposes, we call it the fall, we turn away from God. Our life is full of thorns and thistles. And so sadness is very much part of our experience of life, our pilgrimage of faith. And last year here in ARPC, our church, Adam Road Presbyterian Church, we just did a series at the end of the year on the book of Psalms, on Psalms. And we picked up from Psalm 42. And yes, people would say that's a psalm that speaks about depression, about lament. So if you read the Psalms, the majority of them speak about sadness, lament, cries, anguish, just crying out to God for unanswered questions, for the suffering of life, for the pain and the hurts and broken relationships. So far from sadness being treated, and then finally depression being treated as a stigma, it shouldn't. It should actually be factored in as part of, for want of a better word, our expected dose of our spiritual journey. It will be there. And if there was a Bible passage that spoke about this in the New Testament, I take you to 1 Corinthians chapter 7. 1 Corinthians chapter 7. And in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, it says this. Allow me to just read that and then give one or two thoughts about it. 1 Corinthians 7, verse 29. What I mean, brothers, is that the time is short. From now on, those who have wives should live as if they had none. By the way, please get that right. That's not asking us to go and leave our wives behind. Those who mourn as if they did not mourn. Those who are happy as if they were not happy. Those who buy something as if it were not theirs to keep. Those who use the things of this world as if not engrossed in them. For this world in its present form is passing away. Of course, we don't have time to explain all of that in detail, but a Bible passage like this, Paul is writing and really asking the Christians in the city of Corinth to think about all things in light of Jesus and His death on the cross, and then to think about it from eternity, right? And when we think about our lives in the light of Jesus, His death on the cross and eternity, everything that we face in life is temporary, which includes our sadness, our suffering, and our depression. So Paul would say, if we are married and we have marital duties, they're temporary. If we go through mourning, it is temporary. If we are busy with life, it is temporary busyness. If we acquire things and we're buying things, don't rejoice so much, because everything is passing. So I think that's an important thing for us to realize. So far from it being a stigma, it should be expected as a normal part of our faith journey with God. I hope that helps in some way.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Pastor Chris, for reminding us that sadness and suffering in this life is a normal, common experience for all Christians as we wait for Jesus to return. And the comforting part of that is, as we hope for His return, we know that all this mourning and sadness is passing and it is temporary. So we hope, dear listener, that it encourages you and that you will keep holding on to the hope that you have in Jesus. Dear listeners, we hope that you have been encouraged and blessed by our session today. If you have a question for us, please email mental.wellness@arpc.sg or send a direct message to @soundmind.sg on Facebook or Instagram. The Mental Wellness Ministry podcast is now streaming on all your favorite platforms. You can listen to us on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, or Facebook. Tune in the way you like it for your Soundbites for Sound Minds today.